There's one major question from this Sunday sermon that I think we need to take time to really connect with, to wrestle with a little bit. And that's this: are God's ways best? You see, when we're trying to decide whether we should do something, we're trying to make a decision, whether it's a big decision or a small decision, many times our answers we'll find in connection with how we would answer that question. Are God's ways the best? You see, God is not into our happiness. He's into soul change. Now, that doesn't mean that he wants us to have a horrible life or that he desires for us to always be in pain or something like that. But ultimately, the Bible tells us that God desires all to come to know him. He desires soul change. And this soul change will change our lives. You see, the first part of a soul change is accepting Christ as your Lord and Savior. And if you haven't done that, then we would love to talk with you. We'd love to be able to share what this is like, what it means, and how you go about doing it. Because it's a free gift that Christ has given us because of the sacrifice of the cross. And so if you haven't taken that step of soul change, then please message us, comment on this video, and we'll connect with you so that we can talk to you about who Jesus is and why it is so important to accept him as your Lord and Savior. But many people have done that, and soul change doesn't stop there. You see, soul change, it comes into play when we're walking our everyday life. This is the process of sanctification. This is where we learn to submit daily to our King. Ron talked about how many of us, we've knelt before God. We've surrendered to him. But sometimes we're holding on to other areas that we really don't want him to touch. The picture he gave us was the idea that we have knelt one knee before the King. And as I began thinking about that picture, as I kind of replayed that picture in my mind, I began to realize that there are many areas in my life that I've only knelt one knee before him. And the picture for me is because then when something happens that I don't want to do, when God asks me to do something that is uncomfortable or something that isn't really what I want, because I only have one knee down, it is really easy to get up and move away from the King and do whatever I want. And so Ron challenged us to say, hey, maybe it's time to put the other knee down. Where are you in this process? Where are you in daily submitting to the King in all areas of life? Maybe you need to ask yourself that question. Have I submitted not just one knee, but both knees? Because when both knees are down, there's not the ability to just quickly get up and move. I'm there, and I'm at his feet, willing to do whatever he calls me to do. And this is where that question, do I believe that God's ways are best, comes into play. Because if I don't, then there's no reason for me to bend any knee. There's no reason for me to come before him and say that I surrender to you because his ways aren't the right ones. But if I answer the question to say, God, your ways really are best, then I really don't have an option but to bend both knees to him. I mean, it would be foolish of me to come before a king and say, you know what, you have all power, all authority, you can do whatever you want to me, but when I'm uncomfortable, I'm just going to ignore you. That would not go over well in a human culture. Yet we feel okay to do that with God. And so I want to encourage you. I want you to think about the idea of what knee you haven't bent to him. Maybe there's a calling on your life that you've been ignoring. Maybe there's a volunteer position at your church that you've been pushing off to the side. Maybe there's an occupation that you have been not desiring to go after. Maybe it's in ministry. Maybe it's as a missionary. I don't know what it is. Maybe you just want to have more life for yourself, and so you're not taking the time to invest in other people. Maybe you're not taking time to invest in your family. But see, we all have knees that aren't bowed to Christ. We all have difficulties in our lives that we need to give over to Him. And so I want to encourage you to wrestle with that question. Are God's ways best? Because if they are, then bending your knee to Him is the only option, and it makes the most sense. So put yourself in a position where you can't take over, where you can't hold anything back, where you truly let God lead because you have come to the decision that His ways are the best, even if I don't understand. Will you put that other knee down and let God use all of you for His glory?